Okay, so it's January 30th, 2019, and we are at the end of the sprint 17 for Kiali. Last time we didn't do a demo for the sprint 16 because it was over the Christmas shutdown and there was little to demo. So this time, Joel will start, followed by Edgar, and then Gary about Jaeger. So Joel, if you're ready, you can share your screen.
Okay, so sharing. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes, and we can hear you well.
Cool. Yeah, so this sprint has been quite feature-rich. We have done something for the namespaces selector. So in the graph, you know that you have this namespace selector when you can you have some functionality like clear all and select several namespace, etc. And this was a separate selector from the graph and from the other page, but now you have the same in the other pages. So when we
I think I lost Joel.
Yes. An overview, because obviously the goal of the overview page is to show to have a global view of everything that you have. So it has to show all namespaces. But if you click on, for instance, in the mesh arena and the workloads here, the icon here, so you get it selected as before, but with the new namespace. Next thing, the unified YAML editor. So before, what we had in the service view, when you go to service details, and for instance, or let's find another one. So I don't remember, maybe Istio policy as a destination rule, and here in the destination rule and virtual services, when we clicked here or here in the view YAML, we were opening a component with the same with the YAML and etc. But it was within the same under the service view, and now it's unified with the one that you can find under Istio config view. So it's just simpler for the navigation. The place where we can find this is only one place. We don't duplicate the information, so it's better both for navigation and also for the code simplicity. Next, quite big feature, and that I think will show a bit of the future of Kiali, is the ability to create routing rule, Istio rules directly from within Kiali with a nice wizard. So here I'm going to a given service like Bol. You can see that I have two workloads, so two deployments for this service. And there is that new actions here when you can create traffic routing. And when you click here, there's that pop-up that comes up with the two different workloads associated, and I can set different traffic weights. So I can set with the sliders, they automatically adapt with each other. And of course, you can also set like 100 and create the rule. And as you can see, you have one virtual service that has been created there and one destination rule. So the destination rule is basically going to declare the subset depending on the label, and the virtual service is of course the weighting, the weights applied to each of the workloads, the destination workloads. If you want to see the YAML, you can see here what has been created with a subset and weights and etc. So this is the first step to have kind of integrated wizard for creating rules. I'm pretty sure that we will go further, maybe with a source label matching, I guess, or something like this. Be very great that we have some community or user feedback to try to see where we want to go first, because obviously there is many different rules that we can create with Istio, and it would be nice to see where the users are more interested in. The next point is that I have nothing to show for that. It's some improvement in the REST API, because we had previously the Istio validation rules were provided by different endpoints in the REST API. So we have merged these different endpoints into a single one, so that we have a cleaner REST API for that. Then we have the support for display a new kind of Istio object, which is the policy, like authentication policy. So here, for instance, we have in the Istio types, we have a new type called policy. And you can see here that I've created one already. So this is the objects of kind policy. You can see it here in the Istio documentations. Like there is in different tasks and tutorial, there is end user authentication, and in their example they are creating something named kind policy, like for JWT example for authentications. And so this kind of things is now here in Kiali, and as any other Istio object, we are able to delete it and to edit it. So here I can tap anything. Well, one thing I forgot to say about when we create virtual services and destination rules is, of course, we are also able to delete it. We can do it and go back to the previous states. There's been some change also in the metrics pages. So if I go to some workload and show the metrics here, so the inbound and outbound metrics from Istio. So this is the Istio metrics that we've been showing from the beginning. I don't know if you remember, before we had like the same 6 charts here, but taking much more space, like all the width of the page and pretty much all the height also of without scrolling. So we had to scroll a lot to see all the different charts. And now we have this 2 columns view with also a bit reduced the height, so we can see more at the same time. There's still some more improvement that we can perform here. Like when we have no data on charts, we could have a smaller view with just saying no data here. There is ongoing UX discussions about this, but this is a first step to have a better user experience on that page. And then what we have next is I've been talking in the previous sprint demo about the runtimes monitoring feature, and but it was not merged yet in master. So now almost everything for the metrics are merged. So it means we have here, for instance, the runtimes that is being recognized as vertex, and we have the different metrics that are coming not from Istio but from vertex. So you have here, for instance, the vertex server metrics, and sometimes so it's completely up to the framework who provides the metric to propose something that is relevant for your application. Sometimes, of course, we can have some overlap between the metrics given from the framework and given by Istio. For instance, the server response time is something that comes both from Istio and from Vertex. But it's also interesting to see both, because a way to see, for instance, the overhead of the Envoy proxy. For instance, I'm showing this. Here you have the request duration that is about 5 milliseconds from the server side, and we can see on Vertex that it's below 1 millisecond. So you can see that there's an overread that is probably coming from the proxy sidecar. And
quick question: how
yeah.
are we actually pulling those metrics from Vertex?
So I have set up, so it's pulled from Prometheus. So here I have configured my Vertex microservices to push metrics, to expose metrics to Prometheus. So the same Prometheus that comes with Istio is scraping these metrics. This is something not yet very documented, but it's in the future, maybe in the next sprint, I don't know, we will document this a little more. I've also recorded a video to show exactly how to do it. But basically, the big picture is so first step is to expose the metrics. Second step is to configure your deployment to have the scrape annotation so that Prometheus will scrape it, because assuming that Prometheus is configured to scrape with the Kubernetes service discovery, the different pods that it finds. And finally, there is an annotation that is expected by Kiali to make the link between a dashboard that we have configured with a new CRD that comes with Kiali and the deployment that you are using. So I have not everything ready to show here, but I've recorded a video that shows everything about that, and also so it will be documented in next sprint, I think.
No, that's awesome. That's cool that it uses Prometheus. So I guess my only concern is just like if we're deploying Prometheus with Istio, but we also talk about customers using Prometheus for general application performance metrics, like that's an overlap kinda. And so we just need to make sure from a documentation perspective that we're clear about like, well, if you're going to use Istio, like do this, but if you're not going to use Istio, but you still want APM, like do this other thing. So it's more of like a docs consideration.
We have a plan to, and it's already you can do this already. Use a second configuration for Prometheus URL in Kiali. So in Kiali, basically, when you install Kiali, you have a default URL for reaching the Prometheus server, which is the one that comes with Istio. But we have a second possibility of URL, which is specifically used for the runtime monitoring feature. And so we can have this separation with two Prometheus instances.
Can you support any number of arbitrary Prometheus instances?
No, it's just two.
So the concern with that, and I don't mean to like pile junk on you, but from a tenancy perspective, like I can envision a customer where service A talks to service B, but each of them has their own Prometheus stack for tenancy and security purposes. And so if we can't talk to any number of Prometheus to pull the data, then we have a potential gap where like they'd only be able to see some of the data for some of the services.
I mean, we need to continue with the demo to be on time, but just to
yeah, we can take it offline.
Our goal is not to make like the infrastructure for Prometheus. That will be something. It's something we rely on the OpenShift Matrix team to provide this Prometheus infrastructure that like both scale is multi-tenant and so on and so on. So it's something we want to leverage later. We had several conversations with them, but yes, for now it's pretty limited into what we can do with Prometheus. It's just one server. Like there will be performance considerations as well.
And that's all for my demo.
All right. Edgar, are you ready?
Yes, let me share my screen. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Right. So my demo for this sprint is a little short. I don't think I will spend a lot of time. So starting with some additional comment from what Joel has already said about the new namespace dropdown. Well, recently this has been able to persist between reloads of the page. So for example, if you close the page and reopen it again, like if you go out or you close your browser or something like that, then the namespaces that you had selected will persist. It will show up again. This also works, if I remember correctly, it also works between logins. So if you log out and return to Kiali, it will also be persisted, and you won't need to reselect again what you have previously selected. So this is just an additional comment to what Joel has raised about the namespace. Also, a little enhancement or maybe for consistencies that we have reserved the log icon. For example, previously it was showing a log icon and now it's showing a little key. If you can see, if I can zoom it is now a little key icon. And now we are reserving the log for mutual TLS purposes. So every time you see this icon, it should be denoting or telling something about mutual TLS. It's only about consistency. We don't want to confuse users to think to be wondering what exactly mean of this icon. Well, we have added something for a new feature also for the debugging purposes, at least for error reporting. You will be able to click here in the question mark icon of the masthead, and you will see a new option to view debug information. So you click on it, and it will open a new window. I will show a lot of data that is stored in the page. We will start requiring this data when you open issues on GitHub or everywhere you can report issues. So this is mainly for fixing issues. I hope this will make easier to identify issues so that we don't start asking a lot of questions from the users. There has been also a small improvement in consistency in the application list and also in the workload list. Previously, there was a column here which was showing the error rate. It was removed because it was somewhat redundant because the health indicator also shows the error rate. The column in the main list was showing the overall error rate, and in the health indicator is split in between inbound and outbound error rate. So it was a little redundant. Sometimes it was a little confusing, so we choose to remove that column. Also, the sorting is now by health instead of by error rate. So you will be able to sort, and you can choose which ones to show first. This was also done for the workloads, so there was an error rate column and it's removed, and the same thing for the sorting. Also, I think that the most visual feature that we have done this sprint is these new filters or selectors. Not sure how to call it, but it allows you to the first one will allow you to highlight nodes, and the second one will allow you to hide nodes. So there is a little question mark here that will show with some examples and some help and the available options to do the filtering. So for example, if you want to show only or highlight edges with some error, you can type %r, and let's say that we want those ones with more than 10%, and it will highlight the edges. You can see these ones. I can change it to less than more than 1%, that you will highlight everything. Same for the nodes. So for example, if you want something whose name is reviews, it will highlight the nodes. Oh, sorry, maybe reviews. It will highlight the nodes in the graph. The other box is for hiding items in the graph. So if instead of using this one, I use this one, it will hide everything that is inside this box. So it's there. So this is useful for finding things, filtering out data that you don't need to see. I think that this is a quite nice feature, so I hope you will enjoy it. There is a new feature that is not yet merged. I'm not sure if it will merge in this sprint, but I will just mention it. It's about the support of gRPC traffic in addition to HTTP and TCP that we already support. So we'll start supporting gRPC traffic. And it will show you, as usual, the metrics in the side panel, and as usual, some data in the labels of the graph. But I will just mention it briefly because I'm not sure if it will emerge, but just to let you know that it may be available for this sprint. And last, we have been updating our web page. I think that most updates has been in the installation section. We now have some redirections to Istio, Maestra, and YouTube pages. The fifth one will redirect you to the installation page that we have in the Istio official site. The second one will redirect you to the installation page for Maestra, in case you are using Maestra. It will describe you how to install Kiali. And also for developers, we have a link to the GitHub instructions. This is mainly for developers, but if you are a developer, I hope this will be useful. There has also been an update in the quick install section. The main update, or the most important update that is here, is that you can install Kiali using only one command in the command line. Previously, you need to run several commands, and well, this is just an improvement in the install experience for Kiali. Well, basically that's it from my side.
Thank you. Gary?
Okay, I'll just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, just doing a quick demo of a new feature in the Jaeger UI that's out in Jaeger 1.9. This is the current view of a trace instance, so it's showing a sort of timeline, and you can view the individual spans and tags and details. If you go up here to the right, you can now select trace graph view. So this is showing the spans in more of a hierarchy, but unlike the timeline view, it can show an aggregated view of the spans that are in the trace. This is actually showing the book info example, so they're all single spans, but if there were similar spans within the trace, and they'd be aggregated. So you can see sort of various details about the spans. There's a legend on this side that shows the various details, so you can see the number of counts. So if there was more spans of a particular type, the number of errors, service, average time, etc., etc. You can also get some slightly different views on the information. So at the moment we're looking at the service view, so that all the boxes are coloured by the service, but you can get ones that focus on the time related to the overall trace, or in terms of the individual time spent in the spans themselves. So I'll just show that. So if we switch, right, so this is kind of highlighting where for this particular trace instance it's spending most of its time in these particular areas, so it can help focus identifying performance problems. And if you go to the self-time view, with this it's not particularly interesting, but what it's doing is it's showing where a particular span is spending more of its time in doing its own work, as opposed to delegating to other services or other spans. Okay, so that's experimental. So any feedback on that, on this graphical view, or any suggestions on how it can be improved to help solve problems would be appreciated. The other area where a lot of work's been done this sprint is further work on the operator. I'm not going to demo it now because it takes a while to kind of start up, but in Jaeger there's been support for collecting spans using Kafka, or distributing them to the collector over using Kafka as a way to support a streaming way of processing the spans. So the operator now supports this configuration. So as well as the all-in-one production strategies that we already support, there's now one called streaming. So you set up information about Kafka in this new component called ingester, and then you can still define storage as before. So in this case, it's at Elasticsearch. And that's it for this sprint.
All right, thanks. Thanks everyone. And, so we'll start. We'll do the release on Friday as usual, and then start the sprint next Monday. Thanks. Bye. There was a question in the chat, by the way.